Everyone, back to the more YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the Aftermath. This is the show that we do when the dust has settled from the post-match reaction, which is normally quite feisty and fiery. But on this post-match reaction to the defeat at home against Brentford, I was very calm. I kind of did it to make a bit of a point, really. One, it's been a bit of a tough week with regards to maybe my overreactions, but also I was dug up for saying you just shout and scream to get clicks and likes. And funnily enough, I was as calm as a vicar delivering a Sunday sermon, and guess what? Got even more views. So the people who said that, I don't think your argument carries as much weight, much like the argument for what is going on with Newcastle doesn't carry much weight either. So Eddie Howe came out in the press conference, and regardless of what some ridiculous, nonsensical, pompous journalist told you, he is under pressure. And you know who puts him under the most pressure? Himself. And that's what he said in the post-match conference. He looked a broken man, to be honest with you. And I take no joy in that. I take no pride in that before these crazy happy clappers go mad in the comments saying, oh, I bet you're happy now, he's struggling, he looks really sad. I'm not at all. No, I don't like seeing Eddie Howe looking that way. I don't think any Newcastle fan does. Eddie Howe is normally confident and calm and measured and articulate, and you think he's got a plan. That's what you think when you see Eddie Howe talking, regardless if it's a win, draw or defeat. You think the man's got a plan to make it right, but he has looked like he hasn't got a plan for quite a long period of time now, and it hasn't just been this season. It's probably the back end of last season too, where we just limped over the line to get Champions League football. And if it hadn't been for Emi Martinez being mental at Old Trafford, we probably wouldn't even be in the Champions League this season, but that's by the by. Has he had a rough summer? Yes, he has. There's no doubt about it, but some of the excuses the pundits are making from as well in the media is absolutely crazy. I'll get into certain pompous journalists in a second, but going back to Eddie Howe himself, he come out in the press conference, and after the match, he actually kept the players in the dressing room for a long time. So that tells me it's reached a crisis point here. It's reached a point where we have to sit down with each other as a team and say, what the fucking hell is going on here? And probably this should have been weeks ago. I was watching the Geordie Journos, and Liam said that quite poignantly as well, as he always does. This should have happened weeks ago. This should have been after the derby. This conversation should have been had. But they had that conversation clearly because Eddie kept the players in for quite a long period of time. Kieran Trippier came out and spoke to the press, and listen, Tripp speaks really well. He's a proper professional. You know, I think he'd be a great coach one day. I've always said that, but he shouldn't be anywhere near a top-level Premier League game at all. Brentford ran rings round him. Everybody's running rings round him. His legs have gone. His mind is still sharp, but his legs have well and truly gone. And this is where you got to criticise a manager. Just go to the bench and give Leo Shahar the nod and let the lad have a fucking go, man. I mean, he should have come on in the second half yesterday because Trippier was getting ragged all over the place, man. Absolutely right. He's lucky he didn't give a penalty away in the opening minutes. There's nothing. Why should there be something stopping him putting Leo Shahar on the pitch, man? I mean, what confidence does that give these young players? You got them on the bench game after game after game and you just don't play them. I mean, if we haven't got money to spend on players, which is a weird situation as well, because you've got the board saying one thing and the manager saying another, so nobody knows where the truth lies there. But if you haven't got money to buy players in January, which you massively needed to do, you know, if it is the board that have told Eddie Howe no, they've let him down. But if it's Eddie Howe who's told the board no players fit my criteria, then he's letting the squad down because we need bodies. Malik Chow is dead on his feet. Players are getting injured. Bruno come back and he looked rusty as hell because he has to come back and jump in the team, and not just jump in the team and play, but carry the team, because Sandro Tonali couldn't give a fuck anymore about Newcastle United. All the noise around him, his agent talking. I just wish Louis Miley had been fit, because I'd have seen that fucker drop on the bench easily. But I'm not even sure how would have dropped Tonali. He probably would have dropped Trippier and put Miley in at right back, who would have been better than Trippier, no doubt. But everything's wrong with the minute at the club. Everything stinks at the minute. It's stale. It's like a pint of off milk in the fridge. I've been saying that for weeks, and I've been getting dogs abuse for it, as have other channels as well. And listen, nobody, no channel, no fan who's criticising this manager is ever going to underplay what this manager has achieved at this football club. He's been brilliant for this football club. He's, you know, the most successful manager in a long time, as you can see, because he won that cup. But you see these journalists jumping on X to mount a defence for him. I mean, I've come off X as ever more because of the aftermath of what happened after the City game. I just couldn't be bothered with the nonsense, man. If you want to make your point about football, make your point about football, but back it up with facts. You know, this pompous journalist talking about how the fans hounded Bobby Robson now, and he's right in that regard. That did happen, but Bobby Robson's teams were fighting for titles every season and Champions Leagues every season. It's a total different world to where we are right now. Kevin Keegan left. We were title contenders. We should have won that league. We were 12 points clear. Kevin Keegan left because, not just because of the strain and the pressure and the burnout, which is valid, but he also left because of the way the club was moving financially. And, you know, prior to public limited companies and all that stuff. He didn't like the way that was going on. That's why he moved on as well. So it wasn't just that. But to throw that out to fan the flames of toxicity within the fan base is just really irresponsible as a journalist. And I don't understand what this guy's crack is. I really, really don't. I mean, he's obviously an educated man. He's been to uni. He's been a journalist for a long time. But all he's doing is fanning the flames of toxicity. Maybe that's what he wants to do. Maybe he wants to go down the Katie Hopkins, Joey Barton route and possibly cause a little bit of angst in amongst a normally united fan base, which couldn't be more separate right now, because you've got people who are calling for change and people who are so devout to the manager that it doesn't matter what he does, where he finishes. I think we could finish bottom 3 and go down, and some of these fans would still be shouting, Eddie is our king and Eddie we trust, and it's so tiring and boring to have this argument over and over again. But you've got to look at the facts. The manager's come out now and he said he needs to do better. He needs to look at himself and he needs to find solutions. And that's the first time he's probably come out with that admission in front of the press pack. And the press pack, were relatively easy on him, as they always are, but he knows this isn't going right. And, parking how you feel about the manager for a minute, you've got to turn this back on the ownership as well and the players. Now, the ownership did back him in the summer. They gave him 250 million quid to spend, and he's not spent it very wisely. Let's get it right. Outside of Malik Chow, the signings haven't worked out. Alanga, supposed to be Premier League ready, first through the door. Haven't seen anywhere near enough from him. Jacob Ramsey, nowhere near the player we thought we were signing from Villa. Johan Visser, we had a Brentford fan in our chat, and they were booing him, and rightly so, and none of the Brentford players even shook his hand. That tells you how they feel about Visser, and rightly so. He's been shit for Newcastle. He had that injury. I think he's lost a yard or two. His runs are just thick as fuck. He doesn't make the right runs. He's always offside, or he's running the wrong direction. Nick Voltemade has started really well, but when he got dropped, his confidence has clearly been battered. And Howe needs to make a decision what he's going to do with this lineup. Anthony Gordon as well. Anthony Gordon refusing to play on the right to get the best out of Harvey Barnes. Tell that prick you're on the right or you don't fucking play at all, mate. End of subject, Eddie. Now is the time to drop the Mr. Nice Guy act and tell these motherfuckers, if they want to save your job, they got to start playing for you. And that's the question I've really got for those players as well. You can talk about the board not buying players in January is reckless, but who's made that decision? Has it been influenced by the manager, or has it come from the board? Where are the PIF? What are they doing here? Have they just started taking the fact that Howe can pull something out of the bag for granted? But he's got an aging squad. He's hung on to players too long. He hasn't rotated. He hasn't sold players at the right time. He hasn't used youth to add an injection of something in the side. You look at Unai Emery at Villa, the other day, young lad comes off the bench from Villa, scores a goal, wins in the game. Where's our players to do that? They're on the bench, but he never looks at them. He never goes to use them. He just flogs the same old, tired, dead horses that just do nothing, waiting to go to the glue factory. It's so fucking depressing at the minute. It really, really is. And I see a lot more fans now are starting to ask the question whether he has reached the end of his road. I mean, this happens with all football clubs and all managers, and Newcastle aren't exempt from that just because of the magic that Eddie Howe has produced over the last 4 years. And just some of the responses to it. I saw a fan on X. I'm not on X as evermore, but I still keep my eye on things just from a distance. It's a little bit like a rough nightclub when you see people fighting through the window and you think, I'll just stay out here and watch it with a can of beer from the fucking shop. Somebody turned around after Eddie Howe's press conference and said, how have we as a fan base let this manager down where he's talking like that? What are you talking about? The fans have done nothing but support Eddie Howe and done nothing but support these lads through thick and thin. But the Premier League form in particular has been turd this season. It's been propped up by the Champions League. But let's get it right. We've played Champions League teams that are nowhere near the greatness that they once were, in the shape of PSV and Benfica. And then you had USG, a bunch of part-timers. When we played teams who had something about them, Barca, Marseille, Bayer Leverkusen, lost the games. So you can't really use that as an excuse for the season being good. Carabao Cup semi-final, yeah, okay, we got there, but City absolutely wiped their arse with us with little effort. We're out of there. We've got Villa in the FA Cup next. We're probably going to be out of that, the way Villa are playing and the way they rotate the squad and have that freshness of youth off the bench. So this month is really, really make or break for Eddie Howe. It really is. Do I think they'll get rid of him at the end of this in the mid-season? No, I don't. I don't think they will. I think they'll keep him till the end of the season at least. But I've said it for a long time now. I've had abuse for it. I don't think you're seeing European football this season from Newcastle United, and that's going to be a huge problem, not just for recruiting in the summer, but also retaining the players that you want to retain in the summer. massive few weeks ahead for Newcastle United and Eddie Howe. I hope he does turn it around. I really do. I hope he does turn around. I think he's been a brilliant manager for Newcastle in the 4 years he's been here, but the magic that he once had is well and truly disappeared. And when that happens in football clubs, normally the inevitable decision is made and the manager is changed. You can agree with it or disagree with it. You can point to the players, and it always frustrates me, and I've said it for a long time, that what pisses me off about other clubs, I've said this about as well, where players can't kick their own arse. All of a sudden a new manager comes in and the same player who's done fuck all for 3 months suddenly looks like a world beater again. And that will happen here if they do make that change. You watch, if they were to bring a De Zerbi in or an Alonso in, they would all of a sudden raise their levels again, and you'd be like, oh my God, where's that player been for a few months? And that's just the fickle nature of footballers, unfortunately. They grow stale, they grow lethargic with managers, and that's why there's such a high turnover of managers at football club. Those dynasties like Ferguson and Wenger are completely gone. They don't exist anymore. But some of the excuses I was seeing on Sky Sports, and I find it very hard to attack Sir Leslie Ferdinand, and I won't do that, but some of the excuses that the media afford Eddie Howe is getting a bit ridiculous now. It really is. You know, these are the same things that were absolutely lambasting, you know, someone like Ruben Amorim for Manchester United. But when it comes to Eddie Howe, he's a bit of a media darling because the same as the New England manager, so they don't criticise him enough. But Eddie was critical enough of himself, I think, in that press conference, and I admire the honesty and the rawness to do that. But the big question is have these players got the stomachs and the balls to play for this manager? But he has to make changes. There's players in that team who do not deserve that shirt right now. Kieran Trippier and Tonali being two of them. Get them out the side. They're a hindrance, not a help, and it's not helping. We need to roll up the sleeves. We need to fight. We need to graft. We're not a million miles off it. We're 10 points off 5th and 10 points off 17th, I think. So we're smack dab in the middle of a sliding door moment in the Premier League. And if the manager is going to turn this around, he needs his players to really step up and play for him. And I'm not sure that they will do that. I'm not sure. But to hear things like Dizzy Izzy on Sky say that Newcastle couldn't get a better manager than Eddie Howe, I've just got to address that as well. That kind of bollocks is nonsense. That's exactly the same kind of shit that fuels the toxicity, like Edwards' fucking horse shit that he writes down in the Telegraph. Let's get it right. Everton Football Club appointed Carlo Ancelotti when they were 16th in the Premier League a few years ago. We got Rafa Benitez, a Champions League winning manager who'd managed Real Madrid and Liverpool and Inter Milan. We got him when we were 18th in the league. You know, he couldn't quite turn it around because we're stuck with the Wally with a brolly for so long. But you can get a big manager. You can get a manager that can turn things around if the board had the ambition to go and look for it. I don't think they're there yet. I think they're still backing Eddie, and I think they'll stick with Eddie till the end of the season. But time is running out of that hourglass for him to turn this around. I think mid-table finish beckons, and it's going to be a really difficult summer for Newcastle. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think about the game, about the Brentford game, about Eddie Howe. Where do you sit on it? I know where most of our viewers sit on it. You probably Eddie Howe out. I'm not going to scream and shout and have a go at him. You know, I think it's really sad to see the broken man sitting in the press conference now, but this has been a long time coming. His stubbornness, his failure to adapt, his inflexibility to change, staying with players well into their mid-30s who have become liabilities instead of assets, that's on him as a manager, and he has to take stock of that. And if he can turn it around now, absolutely brilliant. I'll be happy as a pig in shit. I really will. But I'm not sure that he's got that left in him to do it. But let us know what you guys think. Like, subscribe, hype the video. Me and Mark will be back with what's going on tomorrow night at 9:30, where we'll talk more and more about this, about where and how it went wrong, and if he can change it, and maybe look at shape, formation, stuff like that as well. But come and join us in the live chat, guys, on Monday. Have a belter. We'll see you later.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.